Hello and welcome to this National Education Policy Debrief Part 2. In Part 1, I spoke about the state of the sector and focused especially on the Indian private school system. Today, we're going to talk about the positives of the much acclaimed New Education Policy 2020 or the National Education Policy as it is known to be. Now, you look at the last slide in the previous video, we spoke about 5 recommendations. Number 1 is a universal learning indicator. Number 2 is an accreditation framework. Number 3 is an independent regulator. Number 4 is revising or reviewing the non-profit mandate for education. And last but not the least, number 5 is strengthening the RTE Act. Now we have to move into this video, the part 2 of understanding the positives in that light, because everything is interconnected. You have a problem, you diagnose the problem, and then you come up with a solution. And once you have a solution, you go about implementing it. Now, if you remember, I started off this entire series by talking to you about the ideation, the implementation, and the gap between the two. The intention may be as noble and noble as it is, but the implementation is what takes the cake. So we will be getting there, but to get there, we need to understand what do we need to implement and what does the NEP professes for us to go forward and implement. All right. In more senses than one, NEP has been called as the game changer. And that's rightly so because the kind of innovative perspectives NEP has brought into the table is basically a game changing one for the Indian education system. I will call it as futuristic, I will call it as timely, and I will also call it as much needed than before. So, with that, let's understand how the NEP is changing the tide. Now, if you have to really understand in a nutshell, I have made this slide so that all of us can understand the features of NEP. And before we get to the features, we start by the key principles that governs the thought process, the ideation of the policy makers. Now, if you look at the slide, it talks about respecting diversity and local context as one of the principles, equity and inclusion as another principle, community participation. Now there is a wealth of knowledge available in our communities, and we know in our Indian education system, or for that matter in the Indian context, it is that community which keeps the knowledge preserved as well as carried forward for the next generation. So community participation has also been brought into the policy framework. Technology, none of us are insulated from technology, and as every day pass by, technology is getting deeper and deeper into the DNA of our being. So use of technology and how it can be integrated to the education system is also one of the key principles. Emphasizing the contextual understanding. Emphasizing the contextual understanding, when I say, it's about interlinking the subjects and creating an ecosystem of context in the mind of the learner. It's not about treating the subjects in silos. It's about trying to make it fluid and have the child, the learner, move seamlessly between the two. Unique capabilities. Now, for the first time, NEP is focusing on recognizing, identifying them in each student. It's not about the marks, it's about the learning. So, for the first time, NEP is talking about not a one yardstick to measure, but everyone is unique in their own right. Then, critical thinking and creativity. This, all of us know that a must essential, a more essential 21st century skills, a must have skill, and critical thinking and creativity are important for us to survive and thrive in this particular century and beyond. So that's one of the main principles. Last but not the least, continuous review, or the Kaizen. Kaizen in the Japanese terminology is continuous learning. So continuous review where based on sustained research and regular assessment by educational experts. So it's not that, okay, we are beginning with this particular thought process and principle, but we don't try to look at it from a different perspective as we evolve, but we keep that continuous review as a cornerstone of our progress. So that's the principle with which our policy makers have viewed the national education policy and constructed it. So if you really have to deep dive, I think you need to go through these three slides, the next three slides, which talks about the key features. Now, some of you who have actually gone through it, passionate educators, practitioners, have already been a part of a lot of debates, a lot of conversations, have read news articles about what is NAP, and headlines have been coming out saying this is new, this is going to be a different thing, this is going to be the most amazing thing of NEP. I respect all of you for doing that, and I also respect that you are all aware of it. But the reason I am dwelling upon these in this video is because there are people who do not have the understanding or may not have the time to go through it. And just to make it easy for them, I'm trying to go through the features of NEP in a bullet format, point wise, point wise. All right, so please bear with me if this is being a repetition. I am intending to do it not to bore you, but to bring everybody up to pace on the same platform. Thank you. Now, new features. Talking about new features, as I said, there are three important slides, and this, in a nutshell, summarizes the NEP innovation, what NEP is doing to change the game, right? So, first one is preparing the schools and preparation for the child for the elementary level. So, for the first time, the early childhood care and education is brought into the ambit of the mainstream schooling. So, that's number one. And they are also focusing on 100% gross enrollment ratio. So, that's a high and mighty target where they want to go for 100% gross enrollment. In fact, one of the headlines which also said, we bring back 2 crore people, 2 crore children who have actually gone out of the education system through the NEP. That's one of the most important visions or goals of NEP. So that's also there here. Now, what is interesting here, if you see the point number 4, is school preparation module for class 1 entrants. We always know that there is a pre-primary segment, then there is a primary segment, and a middle school segment, and a high school or a senior secondary school segment. But today, for the first time, NEP speaks about bridging the gap between the pre-primary and the primary with a school preparation module. And they have also constituted a national foundational learning and numeracy mission. I think it's pertinent to speak about what happened a few years back when Indian students participated in the PISA test. We were so pathetic in our performance, and I say this with a lot of shame. We were so pathetic with our performance that we ranked just behind a few underdeveloped and few countries like Kyrgyzstan and other countries. But then there were a host of countries who were ahead of us. If I remember it right, I think we were 72 among the 74 countries which took the test. Now, it was so shameful that the then government even decided to ban the PISA test. But the fundamental element in that test is all about testing and measuring the foundational literacy levels in our children. Today, for the first time, NEP is trying to raise the curtain on that and say, listen, we are not going to run away or shy away from that, but we are going to attack the problem head on. And we are going to create a national foundational literacy and numeracy mission, which will focus on repairing all of those things. And if you remember the part 1 video, I spoke about the ACER report, ACER 2018 report, where 35% students only in grade 5 can actually read a grade 2 paragraph or solve a simple multiplication or a division problem. Now that's what they are trying to aim at, and that's the first feature. The second feature can be bracketed under school infrastructure and resources. Now, school infrastructure is also important. There are around 25 lakh schools in the country today, both private and public put together, but that's not enough. We need more schools, we need more infrastructure because the population, the demography of India is so vast that we need to incorporate all of them and we need more infrastructure. Some of the schools, when I say 25 lakh students, schools, they are underutilized, and that's a known fact. So to solve that, what they are doing is they're creating special education zones with a special budgetary allocation. Then utilize unused capacity of schools, not only for schooling but also round the clock. So there is underutilization of facility. We all know that the schools operate predominantly between 8 a.m. in the morning to 4 or 5 in the evening, but there is enough time where the same infrastructure can be used for something else. So that's another thought process. School complexes and clusters for resource sharing. Now, all of us know that we are a community and we need to grow as a community. So, for the first time, NEP is focusing on how we can share our best practices, not from somebody in Kerala to somebody in Kashmir, but if I am operating in a district, how can I connect with public and private schools around me, maybe in a 15, 20, 25-kilometer radius, and then share my best practices, and together we all grow. In fact, I think you all remember the story of a farmer who said that, okay, I'm going to distribute the best seeds to my neighboring farmers. Why? Because when the wind blows, those seeds actually get translocated to my farm, and then I, as a result, also will have good yield out of those seeds, and similarly, they will also grow. So the idea here is sharing and caring. So that's the second one. The third one is holistic development of the student, and I think this is the most important innovation of the NEP, or the most important point which NEP tries to put forth. Holistic development has been spoken about for quite some time now. When we talk of a student, it's not about the mathematical ability or the language skills, but it is also about the overall thing. And all of us keep saying the headline that IQ is important, but EQ is more important today. And there are enough reports, enough research, and enough evidence to say that people with high emotional intelligence are able to survive and sustain in the current VUCA world. So NEP talks about that. And if you look at it, holistic report card is one thing, vocational education. In fact, 10 days of bagless internship. I'll talk about it in a little detail, but 10 days of bagless internship. Innovative pedagogies like the local artisans, the local craftsmen are invited to the school where they can be teachers. Children can go there and learn from them. So these are the things which will actually develop student into a holistic human being. So NEP professes all of that, and I welcome it with open arms. That being said, let's go to the next part and look at the next set of features. If you look at the new features, number two, inclusivity. We spoke about equity and inclusivity. Now, here, gender inclusion is the mandate, rightly so, because we need to equate the genders. Then, adult education and special provisions for gifted children. So, it's important to take care of slow learners by remediation, but at the same time, it is important for gifted learners through enrichment programs. So, here it talks about special provisions for gifted children. NIOS, the National Institute of Open Schooling, is also given a good fillip by allowing them to do vocational courses and also special courses for grade 3, 5, and 8. So it's a great opportunity for even homeschooling parents. Medium of instruction will be mother tongue. Now, this is one thing which is broadly misinterpreted, in my opinion. Now, the government or the policy does not say that it has to be mother tongue mandatory. It very clearly, in clear black and white words, speak about wherever possible. What it means to say is, research says that up to the age of at least grade 5, that means the child is around 11 or 12 years, it's good if the education is done in the mother tongue or the regional language. Why? Conceptual clarity is greater when the child learns in the mother tongue or the language which is he or she is proficient with. Once the conceptual clarity is there, then we can go on to use the business language, which may be English in our case, or any other language depending on the nature of profile you will choose for yourself in your career. Now, if you look at it, go back to history and look at all those people who are great individuals in our country and abroad, they haven't learned things necessarily in the global language, which is English. They have learned it in a government school, in a mother tongue, in their own regional language, and they understand concepts, they understand values, they understand the basic ethos of the subject. And once they know that, they're able to express themselves in the language once they gain the language skill. While I agree that English is a necessary business language, I will strongly go with NEP here, where conceptual clarity is more important than packaging our content. Expressing it in a way where people are feeling that we are flamboyant is important, but that is not more important than talking wrong content, right? You need to understand concepts first and then you need to express and communicate. So that's where the feature of inclusivity is here. And one important dimension is it just not only sets the context with conceptual clarity, it also widens the net so much so where people from remote corners of this nation, where they learn in their language, they communicate in their language, and they don't understand English, and there is no access to them for learning English, they are suddenly a part of the Indian education system. That's inclusivity. Think about it. I mean, I cannot think about it from the context of Bangalore, Hyderabad, Chennai, Delhi, or for that matter, Lucknow. But I have to think about it from the context of that remote tribal village, a hamlet, which is in the interiors of Madhya Pradesh, Jharkhand, or Chhattisgarh. They are suddenly brought into the ambit through this particular thought process. The next is assessments. Now, you all have seen that cartoon which says an elephant, a tiger, a lion, a leopard, a wolf, a cat, a monkey, a fish. All of them are there at the base of the tree, and somebody is saying that anybody who climbs the tree will pass this exam. Now, we all know that it's the monkey which can effortlessly do it. That doesn't mean the fish fails and deserves to fail, right? So assessment so far has been more or less one size fits all, but today it is trying to talk about a holistic assessment card, and we talk about it. And there are several regulatory and institutional changes which the NEP is recommending for the government to bring it up. So modular exams, low stake exams, board exams, and conceptual knowledge application. These are different varieties. We will talk about it in a greater detail, but assessment has definitely taken a 360-degree change in the mindset as well as in the process. Then the curriculum and the pedagogical framework. Talk about curriculum and the pedagogical framework. Here they're talking about the 5 plus 3 plus 3 plus 4 system, which I think well aware of so far. It's being popularized by the media channels. So I will not talk about that, but then talk about tracking students as well as their learning levels. Now look at it. That was one of the basic problems which I covered in my video part 1, and I also said that is the current state of the sector where no regulation is there on learning levels and learning outcomes. Here they are trying to match the curriculum and the pedagogical framework to measure the learning outcomes, and that is one of the major changes in the mindset as well as in the policy. So I think I would definitely recommend that we follow this in our own institutions in the interest of our students and the society at large. The last of the slides in terms of the features is this. After this, I'm going to quickly run through school education and higher education, but that's more of a reiteration and opening up certain key areas into a greater detail. New features, the last slide, slide 3 of 3, is teacher recruitments. Teacher is pivotal to the entire education system. In fact, we often miss that particular point that it is the teacher in the classroom who makes or breaks the system, no matter how good your idea is, no matter how wonderful and innovative your concept is, no matter how pathetic infrastructure is, it is the teacher who changes the game. And NEP rightfully acknowledges that fact and also assures the teacher that you are here to stay and you are here to grow. So you look at it, there has been an issue with the teachers. And the issue is some of them say that they are underqualified, not qualified. There is no measurement of their performance and other things. So NEP puts to rest all of those issues by saying that, okay, we are creating guidelines and we are creating standards, and all of us are working together to achieve that standard and go forward. So that way, what happens is there is a uniformity, there is a homogeneity for all the teaching community people. In fact, what I see is it may be as giving them an accreditation or giving them a certificate or a stamp saying you are a TET qualified or teacher eligibility test qualified teacher. But then what I see it as, it brings back the respect for the community. A teacher and a teacher's job is not an easy one. We all know it, especially those of us who are in education, we know this. But people who are outside of this educational boundary, they should understand that teaching job is not a part-time job. Teaching job is a full-time profession. In fact, more full-time than any other jobs. I'm not saying this with bias, I'm saying with experience. So this step by the NEP actually gives the respect or brings back the respect to the teachers. Then every PhD student in the country will have to do a module on teacher education. Research and training are two important pillars of knowledge transmission. So while you are enrolling yourself for research through a PhD, you need to understand how to impart that research to your future generation, and that's why the teaching module. So I think that's a great thought process there, and the way they have put it up, saying a compulsory module for teacher education for every PhD student, I think it's a great step, making sure that we are going to be holistic as a community of teachers. Rest, there are national professional standards for teachers and other things. We will talk about it in a greater detail as we go forward. Then we talk about the role of the government departments. In fact, in my part 3 video, I speak about the number of governmental institutions which they have set up or they are going to set up because of the NEP 2020. Why that is important? Because that is the actual implementation part. The ideology, the ideation, the intention may be wonderful, but the implementation is. So I think I will stop here with respect to the features of NEP 2020. Now I will come back and talk to you about, in a little more detail, the school education and the higher education. Now you look at school education, we have spoken about the 5 plus 3 plus 3 plus 4 model. 100% gross enrollment is the key there, and universalization of education. That's the structure. If you see on your screen what used to be followed or what is followed right now and what will be followed with in different colors, where the foundational is up to grade 2, then the third, fourth and fifth for preparatory, middle and the secondary classes. 70% children in class 3 do not have basic reading, and that's why we have foundational literacy and numeracy as an emphasis area, which we have already spoken about. Vocational education, my favorite, being included from class 6 with internship, another feature which is going to directly impact school education. And I think you don't really have to wait for the NEP to tell you to do this. I'm sure some of the schools in India are already doing it, but it's time for a large number of schools to actually bring in vocational education into their mainstream education. Teaching up to the at least class 5th in regional language, we have spoken enough about it, and the importance and the necessary of teaching in regional language. It's about trying to make conceptual clarity happen. Now you focus on learning outcomes, competencies and subject integration. I think that's the key here. We spoke enough about why learning outcomes are not measured, but here these are tips and tools for all educators, all institutions to focus on this, where you spoke on digital literacy and there is no silos among subjects. It's seamlessly integrated. Then developing the scientific temper, integrating the subjects and competency-based education. Somebody is good at something, give them the impetus to go and explore in that particular thing. The learning outcome, the competencies and subject integration is the key when it comes to NEP in school education. Pedagogical innovations are many. Some of them are experiential learning, integrated pedagogy, promotion of peer tutoring. Now, this is very interesting. We always learn when we share. In fact, they say the best way to learn is to teach. And what better than I learning from my own fellow student? So, peer tutoring is also an important factor, and they are promoting that. I spoke about bagless days. Here you go, 10 days of bagless days scheduled in the academic calendar for every child in every school. That's an amazing innovation in the pedagogy, because all of us have debated enough on the weight of the school bag. But today, this is a, I can say, out of the box thinking in the education system. Even a government school child need not carry the bag to the school. Think about it. It may be very simple, but greatness happens through simple steps. So, this is another step there. Equal weightage, no hard separation between curricular, co curricular, and extracurricular. So, we had scholastic and post scholastic, but now it's equal. So, if I perform well in arts, music, dance, theater, and drama, I am considered equal at par with a student who is doing good with mathematics or science or language. So, it's equal weightage and freedom to choose a variety of subjects. Suppose I go into my grade 11 and 12 and I want to pick up biology, physics, chemistry, but I can also pick up guitar as a subject, and I get my scores, I get my credits. It's not that, oh, that's not an important subject, so you will not be given the same treatment and you will be given a stepmotherly treatment because you chose guitar. No, equal weightage. That's one other important innovation. Use of integration of technology. I think we all have known about this, and more technology is getting integrated into the mainstream education. This is very important. Recently, you read a report on White Hat Junior being acquired by Byju's. Forget about the economy of the trade, but the fact is here that coding is going to be, and computational thinking is going to be the future and order of the day. So NEP do not want to turn a blind eye on that. So they focus on computational thinking, maths thinking, and problem solving, and including contemporary subjects into the mainstream. Contemporary subjects like artificial intelligence, Internet of Things, design thinking, holistic health, Internet of Things, everything. And not only technology, even organic living, healthy living or holistic health, environmental education, global citizenship. In fact, this is my favorite. I've always been saying, why are we not teaching constitution in our schools? Moral science or social studies, civics is not what I'm talking. I'm talking about make Indian constitution mandatory, an abridged version mandatory for every school, every student, because we should know our rights, and more importantly, we should know our duties and how to fulfill that. And today, NEP has woken up to that fact and saying that yes, this needs to be brought into the mainstream education. So I really recommend that, and I'm very happy with this particular change. Knowledge of India, I think this is better late than never. We all need to take pride in our country, not just India, any country. I believe any student is studying in any country, they should take pride in their country's literature, history, culture, ancient values, everything. And I think knowledge of India, you can see on the screen, all of this is given to the student, and the student is free to read it, and it's not additional reading, it's not extra reading, it's mainstream reading, which is the best part. School education, as I've spoken about assessments, let's talk about a couple of points on assessments. Reduction in curriculum to core concepts, 360-degree holistic assessment, the progress card is an innovation in itself, and then tracking to students' progress on learning outcomes. So, in fact, you will have to look at this particular slide to understand how the assessment is transformed. Continuous tracking, AI based software, self assessment, and peer assessment, all innovative terminologies. But if you implement it perfectly, it's going to be a game changer. It's going to be a game changer. So we need to look at how can we strengthen the implementation. Examinations in grade 1 to 8, there are low stakes exams introduced to reduce the stress of exams. At the same time, there are key stage assessments. Remember PISA? So we don't want to wait till the child comes to 8th grade or 10th grade to assess and say, oh, you're not good and up to the mark. We want to put in checks and balances at the right time so that the child is able to reflect and also introspect on the learning, and then buck up if there is a lagging behind and then take it forward. So key stage assessment has been introduced. Again, critical learning outcomes, achievement of that is very important. Then trying to move away from rote learning so that conceptual clarity and understanding and integration happens. And then the results of the school examination is only used for developmental purposes, and it's not a yardstick to measure. At least with this, the suicide rates, the emotional trauma our students are going through, the stress and the comparison and the pain the parents are taking, because you can't help but you have to compare your child with your neighbor or your cousin, or I mean your friend or your relative. That's actually adding a lot of trauma on the children. But I think with this, that will also get reduced and maybe it will go out of the minds of the people. This is very important. I spoke about teachers, and as teachers, they are the pivots of the system, and they change the whole thing, and they are the real game changers inside the game changing plan and policy of the national education policy, right? So here they have brought in this amazing innovation for teachers, not just to make them qualified, but also to give them that flexibility. Now look at it. There is a 1 year B.Ed for the first time, a 2 year B.Ed, and a 4 year integrated B.Ed. So teachers can actually go through this at their comfort, at their will, and also at their convenience. So they are creating a teacher education which will be gradually moved up by 2030 into multidisciplinary colleges and universities. So you have a degree, then you have a 4 year integrated one, and then you can actually do it. But you don't have the degree and your existing bachelor's degree in specialized subjects, then you can actually do a 2 year one. You're pursuing your degree and then do it. So you join for a degree, you add one more year, you come out with degree and B.Ed. You are already in degree, you just take up this and you finish it, and then you have completed it, so you have the 1 year B.Ed. That's what this is for those who have completed the equivalent of 4 year multidisciplinary bachelor's degrees like B.Tech, engineering, or have obtained a master's degree. In 1 year you become a B.Ed. So I have a B.Tech or a master's, I just take a 1 year B.Ed and I am a B.Ed. Similar to that 1 year program or a module in PhD, I am pursuing my graduation and I want to also have a B.Ed, take a 2 year one. Or you don't have to do anything, you are still a fresher, you want to get into a graduation, take a 4 year integrated with a degree and a B.Ed. So that kind of flexibility is provided for teachers. But remember one thing, the mandate also says by 2030, all teachers in our country should have a valid B.Ed. This is an opportunity for all teachers. This is an opportunity for all graduates. This is also an opportunity for all B.Ed institutions and teacher training institutions to revise their programs and offer, because that much scope is there and that much potential is available for you. So it's a win-win if you look at it in all perspectives and in all dimensions. Now let's move quickly to higher education. And in the higher education, it talks again about the gross enrollment ratio, but in India, the current gross enrollment ratio is nearly 26%. 26% is what it is. It has already grown for the last few years, but then the ambition this time with NEP 2020 is to reach it to 50%. That is almost double it, which means to create 3.5 crore new seats by 2035. It's an ambitious plan. In 15 years, double the gross enrollment ratio so that we have more trained graduates coming out into the marketplace. Flexibility of subjects in higher education curriculum, which is I think much needed, so that people can do inter department or cross functional areas, and they can learn and they can come out of it with their graduations. Multiple entry and exit points. Now this is very interesting. Suppose you enroll for a degree program, for some reason you have to discontinue, you walk out of it at the end of grade year one, you get a certificate. You don't just say I did not complete my degree. You walk out of it at year two, assuming a 3 year degree, you get a diploma. And you walk out of it at year three, like how everybody does it, then you get a graduate certificate. So that is the multiple entry and exit which they're talking about, and that's going to be allowed in our higher education system. And I think that's a wonderful, wonderful way of looking at things. Now, GDP, it's much spoken. Even the previous policies have spoken that we need to give more for public education, more investment has to happen. So this year they're talking about, with the NEP 2020, they're talking about 6% of India's gross domestic product needs to be given as public investment to the education sector. I think that's the best thing to happen, and that's a good thing. I know it can be more. In fact, the 6% is not enough to take care of the demography of India, but I think anything better than what it is right now is a good thing to happen. So I appreciate that there. Affiliation system, you look at the point number one, affiliation system is on its way out. Why? Because affiliation system gives a lot of room to rent seeking, lot of room to regulatory misappropriation. So affiliation system is on its way out. In the next 10 to 15 years, they're trying to completely ease out affiliation system, and then they're trying to focus on research intensive, teacher intensive universities and autonomous degree granting colleges. So if you are a college with a good footing and you are able to do value, then you become an autonomous college, you can grant your own degrees. I think that's also very, very transformative in the thought process and very innovative in its idea and implementation. So I think that's a great thing for higher education. And there is a big scope for private universities, deemed universities, and good standing colleges and institutions to get into this and then take up this in the right spirit so that they can be the change makers in the process of building this nation. So that's about higher education. Another important aspect of higher education is the mentor and mentee relationship. So they are talking of something like an academic bank of credit, as well as this national mission of mentoring. So I'll talk about national mission of mentoring first. So all the retired professors or the past educational leaders, they're all pulled into the national mission on mentoring, and they'll be assisting or helping and guiding the current teachers and the newcomers in trying to share their experiences and mold them into holistic leaders as well as teachers. So that's a great step, so that you are not leveraging on the knowledge and the pool of knowledge which is available, but you are actually taking it and putting it back into the system. So you don't keep them as sages on stage, but you are actually bringing them into the mainstream through the national mission on mentoring. Then is the multidisciplinary education and research university, meru. This is an ambition one, like the NITs and the triple ITs. They're trying to create a multidisciplinary education and research university almost in every district of the country. That's a great thing. And all these local artisans, craftsmen, local trades, local handicrafts, and local talent will get absorbed with this particular initiative. That's my personal opinion. Academic bank of credits is one centralized place where you can have all your academic scores and credits there. And suppose you're going for higher education outside the country, or you're going for another college, you can just transfer it like how you do it as online banking. It is very similar to online banking, where you can deposit and transfer your amount, but it is in the academic context. So it's going to be seamless, and people are going to take benefit of it in the coming days and the coming years. So that's about higher education. Now, with this, we have covered the positives of the NEP 2020, but I want you to spend some time on these last two, three slides in this part of the video where we talk about who, what, and when, because I want to talk in the next video about all these positives are great, all these things are great, but who's going to do this? What is my role as a teacher? What is my role as an institution? And what is the role of a regulator or a new body who's going to do it? That's the who part. What needs to be done by whom? That's another part. And third, what is the timeline really we are talking about? Some of them you already understood, that B.Ed compulsory by 2030, or affiliation system on its way out by 2035. But is that enough? What is the timeline? Will I see these things, these transformational changes in my lifetime? That's the question we have to answer, right? So all of that I'll be talking about in the next video, that is a part 3 of NEP 2020. And also, having said all the positives, is this so foolproof, or are there any flaws? So I'm going to speak about the flaws of NEP 2020. In my opinion, these things needs to be fixed for all the positives to take off. Otherwise, it's another disaster in the making. So I'll see you soon in the part 3. Till then, reflect, go back in this video. I know I've packed in a lot of content, but the policy is 65 pages. I need to put it in capsules for all of us so that we can use it as a ready reference and we can talk about this. So go back and you can watch the video in slow motion and look at it, make notes, and see how it is going to change your career, your life, and your institution. So this is what I would like to tell you, and I will sign off right now, and I'll come back with the part 3 of the NEP 2020. Thank you so much.